China is home to more than 1 billion people. And in a country this large, trust is a delicate currency. Today's story begins with something simple: a rental apartment, a polite tenant, and a landlord who expected nothing more than a steady monthly payment. But what starts as a quiet rental agreement slowly unravels into a mystery, a chase across China's bureaucratic landscape, and a lesson about how identity, law, and trust intersect in modern Chinese society. This is the story of a man who vanished, a landlord left in confusion, and the system that eventually revealed the truth.
Welcome to China Through Stories, where we explore the complexity of China through stories. Today, we follow Miss Li of Hangzhou. She is not powerful. She is not rich. She is like millions of ordinary Chinese citizens who work hard, save a little, and invest in an extra apartment to secure their future. But one day, her tenant disappears, and when she tries to find him, she discovers that the identity he used was not real. What follows is a journey into China's rental market, its ID system, its courts, its police networks, and the often misunderstood world of credit and blacklists. Through her story, we will take you deep inside how modern China actually functions.
It begins on an ordinary Monday morning. Hangzhou is waking up. Electric bikes hum across wide streets. Food delivery riders line up outside breakfast stalls. Office workers stream into subways as the city prepares for another busy week. Inside her modest apartment, Miss Li checks her phone. Rent day. She scrolls, opens her banking app, refreshes the screen. Nothing. She sighs, but doesn't panic. People pay late sometimes. It happens.
The tenant, a man in his 30s, polite, quiet, quick to smile, but slow to speak. He rented the apartment 8 months ago, brought all the right documents: a national ID card, a workplace certificate, a deposit, and the first month's rent in crisp 100 yuan bills. Miss Li had no reason to doubt him. After all, in China, trust is often placed not in the person, but in the paperwork they show you. To understand what happens next, we must understand how renting works in urban China. Cities grow fast. People move constantly for jobs, education, and opportunity. Over 300 million migrant workers move between provinces each year. It is the largest internal migration in human history. Because of this, renting apartments is fast and fluid. People often sign contracts after a single meeting. Landlords rarely meet family members, colleagues, or anyone else who can verify a tenant's background.
But 2 months after moving in, Mr. Qian sends a message. He says he lost his job. He asks for a little time. He promises to pay soon. Miss Li feels sympathy. The job market has been unstable. Tech layoffs, property slowdowns, and a competitive labor market have made life difficult for many. So she gives him time. 1 week, then 2, then 3. But soon, the messages become shorter, more vague. Then they stop.
After several days of silence, Ms. Li decides to visit the apartment. She knocks. No answer. She calls. The phone rings from inside the room, and then stops. She waits. Knocks again. Nothing. With a spare key, she opens the door slowly. The apartment is empty. Clothes gone. Suitcase gone. Even the instant noodles in the kitchen cabinet are gone. But the rent? Still unpaid. Her quiet tenant has vanished.
And now, a new fear begins to grow. The ID he used, was it really his? Millions of transactions in China. Renting homes, opening phone numbers, booking hotels, buying train tickets, all rely on real name registration. Yet forged IDs, borrowed IDs, and even stolen IDs still exist in the shadows of this massive system. Miss Lee stares at the photocopy of Mr. Chen's ID. The corners look faintly blurred. The font spacing seems slightly off, and a strange feeling forms in her chest. Something is wrong. But she has no idea that finding the truth will take her into the heart of China's modern surveillance system, its migration structure, its courts, and the mysterious world of blacklists. To understand what Miss Lee faces next, we must understand something essential about life in China. Your identity is everything. Every train ticket, every hotel stay, every bank account, every phone number, all tied to a single ID card, known as the Zhumian Shinfenzheng. In a society of 1.4 billion people, the ID system is the backbone of order. Lose your card, and your world stops.
China uses what is called the real name system, 实名制, to keep track of who is doing what and where. It means to buy a SIM card, you must show your ID. To book a high-speed train, your ID is scanned. To rent a hotel room, your ID is matched with police databases in real time. The system is designed to keep society safe and to prevent fraud. But it also means something else. If someone uses your ID, you inherit their problems.
With her tenant gone, Ms. Lee walks to the nearest police station. She explains everything. The late rent, the disappearance, the empty apartment, and her suspicion that the ID used might be fake. The officer listens, then scans the photocopy of the ID with a handheld device. A beep, a pause, a frown. The officer looks up. This ID number does not match the name, and the photo is not the registered person. Ms. Lee's heart sinks.
Despite China's sophisticated digital systems, fake or borrowed IDs still circulate. Sometimes a real person lends their ID to help someone get a phone number. Sometimes criminal groups forge IDs for scams. Sometimes a desperate individual uses a friend's ID to escape debt or a court order. The penalties are severe, but in a nation this large, risks slip through. The officer explains gently. Someone used a real ID, but not their own face. A crime called 冒用身份, identity misappropriation.
To understand how this happened, we must look at China's great tide of migration. More than 300 million people live and work away from their hometowns, a population nearly the size of the United States. This movement is shaped by the hukou system, China's internal passport. Your hukou ties you to your birthplace. It determines where you get public school access, medical coverage, pensions, affordable housing, and even legal rights. Because of this, migrants constantly shuttle between cities in search of opportunity. With so many people on the move, informal deals, unverified documents, and borrowed identities are more common than one might think.
The hukou system is one of the most important and least understood parts of Chinese life. It dates back to the 1950s. Every citizen is registered to a specific town or village, and for decades, moving permanently to another city was extremely difficult. In recent years, rules have relaxed, but hukou still affects daily life. A person might work in Shanghai but be officially registered in a small rural town hundreds of kilometers away. This means their official identity and their real-life identity often diverge, and in that space, confusion can grow.
The officer explains that Miss Lee is now the victim of a civil fraud case. But more importantly, a criminal case may also exist against the unknown tenant for using another person's ID. However, there is a problem. The real man behind the ID lives in another province. And the man who lived in Miss Lee's apartment is someone entirely different. Ms. Lee returns home, holding the thin stack of papers that represent her case. She looks at the empty apartment, the unanswered messages, the blurred ID card copy. She feels anger, but also something more powerful: confusion. How could someone simply vanish in a country where almost everything is recorded, scanned, stored, and linked to a single identity? This question will lead her into China's legal system, its digital enforcement network, and eventually into the world of debt blacklists. And the truth she discovers will be bigger than her missing tenant.
With no way to locate the tenant, Ms. Lee decides to take the next step. She files a lawsuit with her local district court. In China, civil cases like this are often submitted digitally. Ms. Lee uses the 移动微法院 mobile micro court app to submit her documents, photos, chat logs, and rental agreements. She waits, and the system confirms receipt. But this is just the beginning.
China's courts handle millions of small civil disputes every year. From unpaid rent to workplace disagreements, from contract disputes to minor property claims, courts rely heavily on digital management systems. But there is a critical rule. If the defendant cannot be located, the case cannot proceed. Here's why. To enforce a court judgment, the system must identify the defendant by Shen Fun Jun, ID card, and verify the person's identity. Without this, the case stalls indefinitely.
Ms. Lee submits her complaint, but soon receives a notice. The defendant cannot be served. Case frozen until identification is confirmed. She is frustrated. The law is clear. The court cannot punish someone it cannot locate. It is a safeguard, but for Ms. Lee, it feels like the system is failing her. This challenge is common in urban China. Millions of migrants move between provinces for work, and the hukou system, household registration, ties people to their hometowns. A person may live and work in Beijing, but officially be registered in a small rural town far away. If they disappear temporarily, the court system has no immediate legal authority to track them in a different province.
China's courts are increasingly digital with mobile apps, online filing, and document uploads. But technology has limitations. If a person uses a borrowed ID or falsifies information, the system cannot detect it automatically. This is exactly what happened with Ms. Lee's tenant. The ID appeared valid in the app, but in reality, it belonged to someone else entirely.
With the court unable to proceed, Ms. Lee contacts the local police.
The officers explained the crime, 冒用身份, identity misappropriation, is illegal. Someone used a real ID to rent an apartment, but it was not their own. Police agreed to open an investigation, but without additional clues, finding the tenant is like chasing a ghost.
In China, the combination of migration, household registration, and massive urban populations makes enforcement challenging. A person can live entirely off the grid for months, especially if they avoid hotels, avoid bank accounts, and pay in cash. Ms. Li learns that despite China's advanced surveillance network, bureaucracy and real-world gaps often leave victims waiting, sometimes for years.
Months pass. Ms. Li begins to lose hope. Then, an unexpected breakthrough occurs. During a routine ID check at a train station, police officers scan a man's Shenfenzheng ID card and compare his face with national databases. This is a standard procedure in China. Train stations, airports, hotels, and even some bus terminals regularly scan IDs against a Gong'an Sitong, public security system, to verify identities and ensure compliance with laws.
China has one of the most advanced surveillance networks in the world. CCTV cameras with facial recognition, mobile phone location tracking, integrated ID scanning in transport hubs, police databases connecting financial records, travel, and court decisions. This system is designed to track people in real time, but it is not perfect. If someone moves frequently or uses a borrowed ID, they can temporarily avoid detection.
One day, the man living under a borrowed ID is stopped by police for a routine verification. His face does not match the ID. The system flags the inconsistency. After further checks, officers confirm he is the man who rented Ms. Li's apartment under false pretenses. This simple, automated scan finally connects the dots between the missing tenant and the fraud he committed.
Police in China rely on a combination of digital tools and administrative networks. 全国人口信息库, National Population Information Database, contains photos, ID numbers, and registered addresses. 公安户籍系统, Public Security Household Registration System, tracks migration and hukou changes. Train and hotel ID logs provide movement history. Credit and financial data sometimes reveal suspicious activity. Through these tools, officers can reconstruct a person's movements even if they tried to stay off the grid.
The man is apprehended in a neighboring province. He is questioned by police and confesses to using the borrowed ID. He had debts elsewhere and believed hiding under a false identity would allow him to continue moving freely, avoiding enforcement blacklists. This brings us to a key point about China's system. Blacklists are a strong deterrent. Even with all the freedom of mobility, most people will not risk the severe social and financial restrictions imposed.
Many people hear about China's 社会信用系统, social credit system, and assume it controls every aspect of life. The reality is more nuanced. What affected this man was a judicial enforcement blacklist, 失信被执行人名单, dishonest persons subject to enforcement list, maintained by the courts. It is separate from city pilot social credit programs. Being added to this list can restrict high-speed trains and flights, hotel bookings, loans and credit cards, luxury purchases, company registrations. It is a legal tool to enforce repayment, rather than a social scoring system. For those on the list, life changes overnight. No long-distance travel,
no access to premium services. Credit is blocked. Even some school enrollment and job opportunities may be restricted. The system is designed to incentivize compliance, but it also highlights how deeply legal decisions affect everyday life in China.
In Chinese culture, reputation and family honor carry immense weight. Being blacklisted is not just a legal issue, it is a social stigma. Friends, neighbors, and colleagues may know. Family members may face embarrassment or pressure. The man quickly learns that the consequences of borrowing an ID go beyond legal punishment. They ripple through personal relationships, work opportunities, and social life.
Imagine trying to live a normal life but being constantly blocked by a system you cannot evade. The man must travel by bus instead of high-speed rail, avoid hotels that require real name registration, pay in cash whenever possible, avoid major financial transactions. Every choice he makes is restricted by the court's digital enforcement. This is how the judicial blacklist enforces accountability without jail time.
For Miss Lee, the police breakthrough brings relief. The man repays part of the unpaid rent. The court formally closes the case. Miss Lee receives compensation for a portion of her losses. Though not perfect justice, the system worked. Through technology, bureaucracy, and legal enforcement, a seemingly impossible problem finally reached resolution.
This story demonstrates how modern China operates. Digital systems track millions of daily transactions. Police and courts are integrated with technology. Legal blacklists enforce compliance. It is a balance of order, mobility, and accountability in a country of unprecedented scale.
Ordinary people living in Chinese cities must navigate real name registration, hukou household registration, court enforcement blacklists, and digital transaction verification. Understanding these systems is essential. Even a simple rental dispute can escalate into nationwide databases, police verification, and legal restrictions. China's cities are vibrant, fast-paced, and digital. Yet this story reminds us, behind every technological convenience lies a complex legal and bureaucratic network. From renting an apartment to taking a train, from applying for loans to traveling for work, life is intertwined with rules, IDs, and enforcement systems.
After months of investigation and tracking, the man finally repays part of the overdue rent. Ms. Lee receives compensation, and the court officially closes the case. Although the full amount was not recovered, this outcome demonstrates how China's legal system enforces responsibility without resorting to incarceration for minor civil disputes. The judicial enforcement blacklist was key. It pressured the debtor to comply, leveraging restrictions on travel, financial activity, and social mobility.
This story reveals something fundamental about modern China. Trust is not assumed. It is recorded. It is verified. And when broken, it is enforced through systems, not just personal confrontation. For ordinary citizens, life requires careful navigation of IDs and real name registration, migration rules and the hukou system, financial verification, court blacklists, police surveillance systems. A single missing step can escalate a small problem into a nationwide enforcement issue.
Beyond legal and technological systems, this story also reflects cultural values. Family honor and reputation are central. Compliance is socially reinforced. Responsibility extends beyond the individual to community expectations. Even with mobility and digital anonymity, social and legal accountability remain deeply ingrained. The man's life, once unrestricted, now operates within boundaries enforced digitally and administratively. He must avoid certain trains and flights, use cash instead of credit, limit travel and purchases, face social stigma for breaking trust. This highlights how China balances mobility with order, allowing millions of people to move and work while still enforcing societal rules.
Through one missing tenant, we glimpse the machinery of a nation of 1.4 billion people. From an empty apartment in Hangzhou to national databases to police verification networks to court blacklists, life in modern China is intertwined with systems of accountability. Miss Lee's story is small, but it reveals a society that is orderly, technological, and sometimes unforgiving. It is a window into the balance of trust, mobility, law, and social norms in a country that many only see from the outside. This is not just the story of a vanished tenant. It is a story about identity, responsibility, and justice in contemporary China.
Ms. Lee's story may be just one small window into life in modern China, but it raises big questions for all of us. How do you feel about the use of technology to enforce laws and social accountability? Is it a tool for fairness, or does it risk becoming too controlling? If you found this story thought-provoking and want to explore more about life under China's surveillance and social systems, we recommend reading We Have Been Harmonized by Kai Strip Matter. Check the link in the description below. Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what you think about technology, law, and society in the modern world. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that explore the human side of China.